Hi, my name is Brad Young, and welcome to the Peak Performance Podcast. Today, we are going to be looking at what I've been doing, the experiments that I've been doing on myself, the things that I've been trying out, utilizing, and, the results. And I got to look at, how it's impacted me, how, we can all utilize these things for peak performance because I'm just, essentially a guinea pig. I went through and I'm trying these things out. And we're also going to talk about the training and different things we're going to be doing going forward. And also, some of the training from the past, we're going to work on clips and guest other things like that. But first of all, stem cell therapy. I went a few weeks ago and I went to a, very highly regarded sportsplex. And so when I went, it was definitely different, but I needed to work on my left shoulder that I hurt, years ago. And I did, been in wrecks and other things since then, and then my right knee, to which I'd fell and I'd hurt the patella. Then I got hit by a car when I was out running a year or two ago, and I landed. It put a lot on it, and I didn't realize how bad the knee was because I'm leg pressing almost 800 pounds, 75 times, and then I'm running good miles, and I'm running with weighted vests and all those things, and so there was some pain and discomfort, but there's not a ton in that knee, but I knew there was damage in there. And when I got down to the facility in Mexico, they confirmed it. We did an MRI, then we went in and they looked at it more closely. And they're like, "Wow, you really have been doing a lot with what's left." I cut the patella a little bit, and it was enough that where it grew back. But if I hadn't have been working out and doing all the things that I did over the years, it could have been a truly, truly crippling injury. It could have been really bad. I mean, and on top of that, getting hit by the car, which is the second time I've been hit in the last few years where people are on their phones. Unfreaking believable that you would be on your phone looking down at a stop sign, pulling out and hit somebody. But, luckily I'm spry and athletic, and I was able to boost myself over the hood of the vehicle. And then the people were act like they were shocked that I was that angry. I mean, you hit me with your car. And so, should I probably just laid down and went to the hospital? Probably so, but I was so angry I didn't do it. And so I went and got this fixed. And I went down and we'll get to the rest of the story in a minute. But then the other problem is my shoulder. I'd hurt my labrum many years ago, and so it's caused a lot of problems over the years. Hurt the labrum. I'm sure I had some small tears in the rotator cuff and things like that. But that labrum, was a solid one. They wanted me to do surgery 20 plus years ago, and I wouldn't do it. And I've just continued to go to the chiropractor and do a lot of stretching, do a lot of things. But when that labrum in there is torn, the issue is everything around it works a lot harder, and so it's caused significant pain over time, and arthritis and things like that. I mean, it makes it to where I have to stretch a ridiculous amount, which you need to stretch anyway. But it's really it's caused issues, and somebody just watching me work out would have no idea that I had that type of problem because I was very strong prior to this the surgery. The day before I went to the day I was getting ready to leave, I went to the chiropractor, but that morning I went and I did full dips, like full body parallel bar dips with 90 pounds on my waist, and I weigh 210 pounds, so that's 300 pounds. I did 35 times straight. I normally get, close to that 30 range, which is, it's significant to do a full dip like that with that much weight. But I've been doing them for years. And so the strength is there. I mean, I did decline presses and I did a significant amount of weight for 50 times. I don't even want to get into much it is because it's a lot, but I've been working for years and years. And I like to work that lower chest because that helps with the definition, making your chest longer. And same thing with the dips, it works the triceps really hard, works my shoulders, but also, it works that lower chest. And so that's what pops. I mean, I do some incline, but not as much. And I may do more now that I got this shoulder repaired. But I mean, it's been something else going through the whole process, you know, with these injuries because, I've worked through them for all these years and run thousands of miles and lifted, millions of pounds of weights and did all these things and continued to work and do everything else, but, just created a lot of pain. And so when I left to go out there, I was in quite a bit of pain because I had to fly into San Diego, and then I had to get, I had a private vehicle come pick me up and take me to Tijuana to a sports complex, and they've treated people, like Joe Rogan and a lot of other fighters and people like that. So it's a very, highly regarded sports place that I went to. And so, on the trip over, I've had pain for years riding in airplanes. And it's funny because I've traveled so much over the years, riding airplanes, and my shoulders are wider than the seats are. So it's, significant pain, in a lot of, in a lot of the cases. So, I was on a cheap flight to get out there because I'm like, it really doesn't really make that difference. It's going to make more on the way back. And so the flight was so cheap that they were trying to charge you for snacks. They didn't give you any water, any little, a little bit of soda and crackers or anything. They would charge for everything. And so, you know, I would not recommend that airline, but it was cheap. It got me out there, got to the hotel. And of course, all the planes were late. Every single plane was late. So, I got in close to 1 a.m. Pacific time, which is 3 a.m. my time. Yeah, I'm in Central time. And so, it's already tired, and the drivers couldn't move anything back. But then they got there and they had blew a tire, so they get somebody else to take me. So the alternate driver, took me across, and it was a wild experience, because you go in and they're already got everything ready. It's not like sitting in a waiting room in the United States. When you're paying that much money to get things done from a highly regarded clinic, they don't play around. And so I get there, and I mean, wasn't just a few minutes. I mean, they already had me over at the hospital, and we were, you know, talking to the physician, and getting the MRIs done real quickly, going through, and they did some other things to check it. Got all of our plans together, and the one thing that they failed to tell me before, because everything that you read and everything they say is, when you have stem cell injections into your joints, especially your knee, you're gonna, it's gonna be sore for 24 hours. That's when the main soreness and swelling is. Well, what they don't tell you is you may have to get in a wheelchair. I wasn't expecting that, and so I was going to be able to drive when I got back. And on the way in, I missed my exit, and so I pulled a U-turn on the way to the airport. Long story short, I pulled a U-turn in a not a great area, and so there had to be trash and stuff around. So my tire picked up some trash, and I didn't realize at the time. And because when I got back the trip, I had a flat tire. But I wasn't gonna be able to drive anyway. So they didn't bother to tell me about the wheelchair situation. So I had to call my family and say, look, I mean, I was planning on driving back, but it's not going to happen. And I scheduled everything to make sure I had an extra night to sleep in San Diego, because you never know how these things will go when they're doing all these injections, because, they took a lot of blood. So, but as we went through the process, they pulled my blood, my urine, and did a very, very extensive breakdown of everything, was going on. And so this type of service in the United States would have been extremely expensive just for the blood work and the urinalysis, and not including the MRI and everything else. And so, I saved money by doing it, but also it created an adventure, and it created the opportunity to go to a very highly regarded place versus just driving down locally to Memphis and then paying a lot more and then not really having an adventure, just going to Memphis, which Memphis can be an adventure at times anyway. But you know, but the deal is, I mean, I wanted to get my body back to peak performance level, or to make it better. Really, it's more of I wanted everything to be healed up so I can run 100 miles, straight in 2026. I want to break the world leg press record, because I already can leg press almost 800 pounds 75 times, and so now with a knee being repaired, it's going to make a difference. So anyway, back to the story. And so as we were getting all these things done. All of a sudden, I realized I'm like, oh wow, okay, I got to get ready. We're fixing to have surgery right now. They already had everything ready. They took tons of blood, and I mean, we had the PRP, had to pull the stem cells, had to get all these things done and get everything mixed. And so, they slightly put you under. They give you a IV, and so you don't remember anything of it. I mean, I didn't remember anything of the process, but it was significant to say the least because when I got through, I mean, you're in pain. I mean, it takes a little while. I mean, I didn't feel any pain or anything for a few hours, but the people advised me to get the pain medication. Go and get the pain IV, and so they give you tramadol. And so tramadol, is not is not an anti-inflammatory. So that's the one thing about if you get stem cell treatment, you can't have any anti-inflammatories. I mean, usually for a month. I mean, it says 2 weeks, but you can continue. You really should continue at least a month. And so, that's what I'm doing. I'm on almost a week 3, and I'm still, no anti-inflammatory anything. I'm not even drinking my Huel because of the anti-inflammatory benefits that it provides. But I will be back, drinking that and my normal diet in a few weeks. But you're in a lot of pain, so that's something else. I mean, you're in more pain than you might realize because I mean they put a lot of, which mine was a different, maybe a little bit special case because I mean mine was definitely a an old injury that had compounded in the shoulder and then the knee. There's a lot of fluid, and so you're in a lot of pain. But they took good care of me. I was outside of one time I had to hop out of the room and scream at them because I was pushing the button and nobody was answering. But the stay there was it was good. I mean you stay at their facility, they monitor you, make sure you're okay. They try to take care of you the best they can. It was good. It was a good experience. And then you're there around 24 hours, and then you get your trip, and they take you back over. It's normally take them to the airport, but I had them take me to the hotel because I'd booked the hotel to fly out on Wednesday versus Tuesday evening because if you do go to this place or you go to anywhere, make sure you give yourself enough time. You don't want to fly right after this. I mean, they say that. They say it's okay, but it's really not. Because I mean, you're tender, you're very sore. I mean, that long, like me, I had to fly across the country. So it's not like it's some little short hopper to 2-hour flight or something. It's a long flight, with multiple stops. So you know, don't buy into that. Make sure you pay attention to that because it's something really, really helpful, because we do these things for peak performance to help ourselves, but at the same time, we got to also remember that you got to listen to your body to understand your body. And I knew good and well I wasn't going to be ready. And so, but what I didn't think about is they didn't tell me about the wheelchair until I was already in Mexico. And so I had to call the hotel, and luckily they moved all the things from my room down a floor, down to the bottom floor. And so I was thankful they did that. I mean, I give them a really good review, and I mean, people were just fantastic, doing things like that because, you know, everybody doesn't do that, and they didn't have to do that, but they chose to treat me well and do that, and so I was very thankful for that. So, you know, they say 24 to 48 hours, but just trust me, as we get through this, it's painful. It is painful. It's a painful process, but you'll start feeling results fairly quickly. But so I went through the day, and I mean, it's hard. I mean, when you can barely get around, I mean, my calf cramped up because it's my right leg and my left shoulder. So you have two body parts done like that, and they're opposite sides. I mean, whew, it's something else. But I ordered some Subways from my room and eat food. And I brought all these protein bars and things, and so I was ready. And then time of the trip back, I had no idea that the tire was flat. I had no idea, which is terrible. But I couldn't drive anyway. And so like I said, I had my family going to wait, meet me at the airport to drive my automobile back. So I couldn't do it. A lot of times I'll rent a one-way car, and it's roughly $100. You can rent a one-way, drop it off at the airport, and then rent one on the way back. One way, drop it back off, and you're done. And that's usually the way I do it. I didn't do it this time 'cause I never thought about not being able to walk or drive. So, you got to remember, when you get things like this done as well, you're going to be in pain. You're not going to feel good. I couldn't raise my arm, couldn't take a shower, didn't do anything. So you got to have baby wipes or, I found some bath towel things, some like adult bath things because you need those things because you're not going to feel good. I couldn't do anything with my left arm and, couldn't do anything with my right knee. I mean, I was in tremendous amount of pain. They didn't send any more pain medicine. So it was a long trip to say the least, getting beat around and, I had this one big guy that sit up there front with us, and I mean, and I got all over him about it. But it's like, you have to not hit me. I just had surgery. You have to. I mean, I don't care how big you are, and wide you are. You cannot bump into my shoulder, my leg. I just had surgery, so it's kind of rough. But I think he knew I meant business because I wasn't playing. That and honestly, you should be more courteous than that than to do shit like that. You shouldn't do that as a person. I mean, when somebody's had surgery, you shouldn't, be so worried about getting up front with with your leg room to be able to do it, to be able to sit by, to do it. But again, he was okay. He stayed away from me, and overall, we got to Dallas, and then switched planes again, and then the wheelchair people just left me there for a while, and everything was running late, so it was not a good experience overall. And got back, and it was just, like I said, the tire was down. If my folks had been there, I'd had to call a service truck to take my automobile to somewhere to change the tire, and then I wouldn't have been able to drive back anyway. I'd had to get the tire changed, get it out of the airport, and then I had to get somebody or get an Uber back. So, that's things to think about. Planning if you're doing something like this because we do things to gain an advantage to be able to heal ourselves and use regenerative medicine, but there's a lot of things that we miss too. And just like the driving the automobile, I never thought about my leg being that sore. And it's when you look at all the articles and everything you read about it and you talk to them, it's not generally that bad, but my knee was worse than I thought. So was my shoulder. And so that was one of those things that we didn't know till we got there, and had an MRI on the shoulder in quite a while. So it was a rough trip back riding. I mean, the driver was slinging me around every time they hit a freaking turn. I mean, it hurts. So your pain is significant for the first 10 days. I mean, I slept for the majority for about 10 days. And I mean, my shoulder is still sore. And I mean, I'm on day 20 right now. My shoulder's still sore. My knee feels better, but I can feel you can still feel like a little catch on the inside, but you can feel also to where the patella's grown back. It's when you do regenerative medicine, I can feel where things have grown, and a lot of times it's going to be on how much is gone. That's why my shoulder's so sore because my shoulder got beat up over all these years, and I changed my workouts and everything to adapt to it. But at the end of the day, it's still a torn labrum and other injuries and things in there, and so we got to realize that and keep that in mind. When you're looking at things like this, and so like I said, I'm on day 20, and I mean, I can still barely get my shoulder over my head. I mean, I'm having other issues, with the shoulder. It's tight. There's a lot of things, but I've just got to let it heal. I mean, I can already feel to where the thing that hurt me the most in the back of my shoulder is not bothering me anymore. When I'm back doing normal, fairly normal activities, just not lifting. I mean, some places say you can, start lifting. Like, they said basically I could start 50% at 2 weeks, but that's not going to happen. That didn't happen, and 100% after a month, and I don't know that's going to happen either. I've got to let these things heal up, right? Just do stretching and things like that. But the thing of it is, I can already tell it's going to be very worth it, because it's taking that pain away. I would have all kinds of pains on long distances, in that shoulder and neck area from the shoulder. Your shoulder affects your running because you're always moving. And so I could tell that, the knee wouldn't bother me. I'm running, but I do heavy legs, it bother me. At times it would bother me on the when I'm running, but not, not nearly like it would in other activities. But the thing of it is it's got to get things fixed. And so with regenerative medicine, we can do that. We can get these things fixed. And I'm going to continue to update this because you know, it's been a really, really good experience, so far. I mean, I've really enjoyed it. It's, you know, give me a chance to rest and sleep and get caught up on some of those things. But now I'm back to, making podcast. I've got to write a book for the peak performance because the peak performance podcast, I'm taking, the things that we've used and reviewed, and I'm going to, put them into a book and then, look at, things we're going to do going forward and behind. So I still got to do a review of cryotherapy, which I was utilizing heavily before my stem cells. And so we're going to have a full episode and review cryotherapy because it's a major, major thing. And so that'll be coming up in the next couple weeks because it's made all the difference before. I mean, it takes the swelling down. You can recover from things so much more quickly. It's just unbelievable. But I'll do a more detailed report on that because cryotherapy is just, when you utilize the cryotherapy, it can really help out. And I've got a place locally I go to, and they don't charge that much for full use of it, and so it makes a lot of difference. And I'm also going to update you on Sermorelin. Sermorelin's a peptide, and I got a prescription for it. I started utilizing it about 6 weeks ago, and I can tell differences in my deep sleep, and I can tell differences, with the recovery process too. I mean, I'm recovering pretty well, probably better than I might have without it. But I can tell differences in deep sleep, REM sleep, things like that. And you know, Ceramolin, it helps you naturally ups your natural growth hormone production. And it helps with get things back to normal. Things that we lose over time, it gets them back on a level. So we get back to a level playing field. I can tell difference. I can tell just being in a better mood and things like that already. And so over time, we're going to look at it. We're going to look at, hair growth, muscle growth. We're going to see how I perform when I get back to really working out in a few weeks. But, I've been training for years and years. So I'm not overly concerned about, resting like that because you need to rest. I mean, the last time I took a real rest, I took 3 weeks off. And that sounds like a long time. People are always worried they're going to be strong if they even take a few days off or this and that. But a lot of times we overtrain and we don't realize how much you train. And so when I took that 3 weeks off, even though I just do the high intensity workouts and run, it made a gigantic difference. Things healed up. I come back in and I was, very strong. By workout too, I mean, I felt better than I did before I got started. So you know, that resting is great. I'm going to continue to rest out throughout July. I'm going to, do more stretching and things like that. But, the high intensity work that I do, it's a lot like Mike Minsker. I've been doing similar things for years. I just didn't even know who Mike Minzer is. I didn't know. I was ignorant of him because, I've been doing this for the last 15 or 20 years. People accuse me of doing CrossFit and things like that, but that's not what it is when I got where I couldn't handle for my shoulder and things. I couldn't handle the high volume, training like Arnold and some of the other greats. I switched to a high intensity protocol to where I do rounds. I start when I run 10 minutes to get warmed up. And then I'll do like some type of a bench press or a leverage press. Then do like bus drivers, front raises. I was doing pulls until it started bothering the shoulder, and so we'll see how the shoulder handles it after, the stem cells go in and they heal all these things. I can't wait to report on that. And then I do heavy dips, weighted dips, pull ups, et cetera, et cetera. But I do everything without stopping, and I'm not doing like light weights either. I mean, we're doing really heavy weights that almost no, very, very few people can lift, and I'm doing them for 25 to 50 reps. But that's how I train for years. That's how, because I'm able to overcome and offset, not doing the high volume training, which I may go back to some different training, as we go through this, because every training method that I talk about, everything, every special forces workout, everything that we've looked at over the last year. We're going to go through and look at it. We're going to go in and dig deeper on the peptides and go into that. We're going to look at the Spartan training, because the Spartan warriors, I mean, we'll look at how they train and train like other warriors, train like the Mongols. We're going to look at, I've got another podcast for, you train like cavemen, things like that. But we're also going to go back to special forces training and looking at the mental and physical aspects of it, training like MMA fighters, all these different things, because, at the end of the day, I mean, achieving peak performance is about going out and pushing yourself and seeing what you can do, going out and trying and putting effort into it every day, because you never know, what you can accomplish if you don't try. Too many people, they quit, when they get to be my age, they think they're supposed to be not doing anything, sitting around, watching their grandchildren or whatever. And and I'm not with it. I'm not going to keep pushing hard and working, because that's the whole purpose of peak performance. That's why I'm using, regenerative medicine. That's why I've looked at, peptides, started utilizing peptides. And, it's almost time to make a decision whether I want to go back to TRT pellets or if I'm going to do TRT orals. Really don't want to go back to the injectables, but I can as well, because at the end of the day, I mean, as we age, we have to level out our hormones. And too many people, they put a stigma and a negative stereotype with hormone replacement, and it's a sexist thing too. When women have their hormones replaced, it's okay. Nobody ever says anything to women about this. But as a man, I have my hormones replaced. All of a sudden, I'm just juicing, taking all these steroids, doing all these things. And what they don't realize is the pellets, don't have my testosterone that high. I mean, it's at a normal level. It's just I'm older, and I've got other physical things that caused it to go down over time. So it just keeps it at an optimal level. I mean, because when you think about doing steroids, I mean, you're thinking about taking 500 to 1,000 milligrams a week. That's doing steroids. I mean, I could go back and take things like I used to, and I mean, look like, you know, look like a Greek god, but that's not the objective here. It's to achieve peak performance and utilize it the safest method, and that's not a safe method. Using excessive steroids and things like that, that's not safe. I mean, it's going to catch up with you eventually. That's why I don't utilize, you know, quote unquote steroid. I use TRT, which is going to be a lot lower dose. It's safer. It's normal. You don't have the same problems. All those type of things. And so we're going to look at all these things, and we're going to report. I'm going to go through and I'll take all these PT tests that we've looked at over time, because they are, to me, they're very important. I mean, and I'm going to do them and and time them, because I mean, I can max most of them out, get real close to it. I mean, I've lost some of the long distance speed. So, on the Marine, when I'm not going to make the 18 minutes, that's just not going to happen. I mean, I would have to really, really lean down, but all the strength side of it always, can max all those things out. I like the Army PT, the new PT they have. You're doing real world activities, and so it's some really, really nice stuff they've got going there with their new PT, the way they're doing their leg ups and things like that. I mean, you're doing a pull up, two-handed pull up with a different, with a different type of grip, and you're pulling your legs up to your chin. That's one rep down, and so it's real world things, and so that's the main thing that I'm looking at is being able to utilize real world activities. Utilize kettlebells, get all these things. And so, I'm going to be providing clips, and I'm going to start doing interviews. I've got so many requests for interviews, because, we are, right outside to being in the, close to the top 10 on Apple Fitness podcast. I mean, when I checked the other day, I was just right behind Arnold. Arnold was 10 and I was number 11. And I'm like, you gotta be kidding me. I mean, someone that I've looked up to for so many years, and I'm right there behind him on podcast plays. And so I thank all the people that are listening. I really greatly appreciate it. I mean, it's something that, is of great value to me, because I mean, I like to go through and I like to lay out, the different types of training, how it can help you, and how we can practically apply everything. And so that's why with every episode, I put practical application in it. I make sure there's a link, a document set up, and there's some that I have to go back in and redo. Then I'll be doing that over while I'm down because I've got a few weeks before I can get back to training like I want to. But I've got to rest. But like I said, I've got a ton of people that want to be on the Peak Performance podcast, and so I got to work on it. I'm fixing to work on getting an assistant because I need help to get everybody set up to do these interviews because so many people are really interested in what we're looking at and what we're doing. All the modern techniques, all the modern gadgets, all the modern things we're using, but also using primitive and old school methods as well to get the most out of everything. Because at the end of the day, I mean, it gets you the most out of life if you go out and you push yourself and you work. You know, go out and do it. And my objective is just to live a good, peaceful life. Be flexible, be able to be strong, fast, and continue to do these things. As I age, because if you take care of yourself, you'll continue to be able to do these things. And people don't just wake up old one day. I mean, it took a lot of years of not stretching and not working out, not doing things. And work is no substitute for working out. I mean, certain work builds different muscles, it builds cardiovascular systems and all that thing. But eventually that wears out because you're doing repetitive motions and it wears out. And that's why bodybuilding and other things help you be able to build a balanced level with your body. Help be more balanced to help even everything out. So anyway, we're going to continue to go in and I'm going to interview people, regarding, peptides and, even, I'm looking for people that have completed the basic training that I've talked about, the different ones and get their input on it. I got one guy I know I'll see at the gym as soon as I can get back there. I got to talk to him about it and see if he wants to jump on and talk about it. But anyway, my name's Brad Young. This has been the Peak Performance Podcast. I mean, hope you found it, fulfilling. Hope you really enjoyed it. Have to learn a little something about what we've got coming up, what we're doing going forward, and mainly, what I've learned so far, going and doing these things myself. Because I mean, there's not too many people that'll hop on a plane, fly across the country, get transported into a foreign country by themselves, stay in a hospital overnight, get up, get transported back, fly back across the country, just for something they love, and I know that to be able to compete and continue to grow, this is what I have to continue to do. I can't slow down, can't be scared. You got to take some risks sometimes. And I took a risk, and I mean, I'm pretty sure it's going to pay off because I can already feel differences, but we'll find out as time goes on. Anyway, this has been the Peak Performance Podcast. My name's Brad Young. Thanks and have a great day.